We've got a new presenter this evening, Mike. Um, Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you.
He's first time presenter and he's got a really exciting program for us this evening. Tell us a little about yourself. Where do you live right now? Where's your hometown? Or where are you right
I'm
now?
I'm in Ridgetown, Ontario, so about an hour from Detroit.
Okay. And how'd you get into model railroading?
Oh, well, as you see in the presentation, I've been into it probably since I could walk.
And what scale did you start off with?
Um, well, I would again, it's in the presentation there, but yeah, I started
We'll get
off in
into it.
HO with British stuff that I don't know how I ended up with British stuff, trying stuff that I probably had for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years until I kind of set a direction. And then I've been on that direction ever since.
And you're basically an F scale modeler right now?
At this point, yeah, I was going down the HO road, and again, as it shows in the presentation there, and somebody else was talking about cats ruling their lives. Well, the situation for me was that we had a couple of cats, and there was nowhere I could put a layout that didn't involve them being able to access it. And so I gave up on it and boxed everything up and started working on F scale that I could run outside so that they weren't getting to it.
Well, let's have a look at the scale that Cat's built then. Phil, if you could pop up the presentation, it's all yours, Mike.
All right. So that's a picture that was taken of me um, for my retirement from teaching. I'm a retired machine shop teacher. So I have some other skills that maybe a lot of people don't have, although, given a bit of effort, access to machinery, anybody can learn to do it. It just takes time. So retired machine shop teacher. Yep, started with trying, and the train direction that I took came from Steam Cars to the Comstock by Lucius Beebe and Charles Clegg. And we used to spend summers in Vermont. I had an aunt and an uncle that had a place there, and we'd go up there, and there was this one place that was an old house, and it was just completely chock full of books. And of course, they had a good railroad section. And this, I came home with this book probably at the age of, I'm going to say 7 or 8, something to that effect. And whatever it was about the photographs or about the Old West or whatever it was, that's been my direction ever since. Has been 18th, yeah, 18th century railroading. Yeah, next slide. But I didn't get to it on my own. My dad was also a railroader, and in fact, I understand that I think it was shortly after I was born, they took a trip down to Edaville, and seemingly that set his direction for modeling. And what you're looking at here is a picture of the caboose there and the front flat car and the front box car were built by my dad um, when he started into the hobby. And then, of course, his life took a different direction and the hobby came to a halt. And he basically kept those three cars in a shed for, oh my goodness, must have been 25 years until he finally decided that he wasn't going to resurrect it and it was time for them to go. He wanted them to go to Maine, but nobody there seemed to be interested in them. And a fellow from Australia contacted us and said, "Hey, I'll take them." And we're like, "Really? Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah." So he paid for the shipping and over they went. So those are now riding behind his number 24, which is and it's a 5-inch gauge, not 4 3/4 like it is in North America. Um, And so, yeah, every so often I get feedback from them. Next slide. So that shows the Genoa. That would have been my first, what I'll call scale locomotive, because the trying stuff got traded in. Some of you from the Niagara area might recognize Niagara Central Hobbies. I lived at that time in St. Catharines, where Niagara Central Hobbies was. So I could go down there anytime I wanted and drool over the cases of brass locomotives, which I couldn't afford. But I have that Genoa. Um, and so that, like I said, scales change, but not the era. So what you're looking at in the bottom picture there is a Bachmann big hauler that I did some serious customization to, changing the wheels around so that it reflected more of an older style locomotive, different, different stack, different domes. And at that time, I really didn't know much about old time paint schemes. I was just kind of guessing it. So that was this kind of the starting point of going in it. And the rubber scaling, well, like I said, I had this F scale locomotive, but I wasn't seriously into it, and I was figuring on HO, and I just couldn't make the HO work anymore, so it ended up in a box, and just by circumstance, I ended up continuing to work on F scale. But before I got to F scale, I continued with building HO, which is the first locomotive you'll see here. So the F scale, it got going with after meeting David Fletcher. If any of you are into large scale stuff, you'll know David Fletcher's name, and for that matter, narrow gauge in general and Baldwin in particular. Um, he's one of the go-to guys, and he lives in Australia again, strangely enough, but he's been over here many times and written books about Baldwin locomotives that were shipped to Australia, and he really helped me get going on the FN3 route. And because what he did was he sent me the files for cutting, laser cutting a little short baggage car, which when you put an F scale, and this is a part of that whole anarchy thing, when you put an actual F scale car next to G scale stuff, you go, oh, right, they don't fit together. And that's how I ended up going further down the F scale road, because I had this nice little baggage car, but it was huge in comparison to the Bachmann G scale stuff that I was pulling behind it. So it was kind of like, oh, well, that's not going to work. I need to move on. For some reason, I started a blog in 2018, which the address is there if you want to go and look at it. I've written articles for Garden Railways. Um, so I'm not a master modeler, but I'm working towards that. I have the author and the car builder. Uh, but I will, I'll be working towards it. I have a turntable over my shoulder here that I'm working on. Next slide. So back to the HO, before I went really crazy into the F scale, um, I had that little Genoa, and I'd been messing around with the idea of what could I do for an HO layout. And again, I still like the old stuff. And I eventually ran across a fellow by the name of John Ott. He's huge into this 1870s stuff and does beautiful work. And he's got a part of his website that's called The Curse of the Black Rivarossi, where he takes old Rivarossi locomotives and then reconverts them into much nicer looking engines than they ever came from Rivarossi as. And so I got my inspiration from him. And so the whole thing there, it says HO versus OO and why it isn't a problem. People get bent out of shape about the Rivarossi, Genoa, and Reno, and that series of locomotives from, the 1970s as being OO scale, which they were. They were OO scale, and therefore somewhat large for HO, but they were only large in the sense that if you were slavishly looking for a model of the Genoa or the Reno, yeah, they were too big in HO scale. Absolutely. But when, because locomotives came in all kinds of different sizes, um, when you measure out the Rivarossi locomotive in HO scale, it gives you 63-inch drivers, which are a fair sized driver. And being from, having spent my summers in Vermont, I liked the central Vermont and the St. Johnsbury Lamoille Valley Railroad. And I had the series of books by Jones on the central Vermont. And I found this engine in it, and it has 63-inch drivers. And I thought, well, that's kind of neat. Maybe I can do something with that. So I decided to remotor it because, of course, at one time they were all built with motors in the tender, and I don't like the drive shaft going between the tender and the cab. So I decided to remotor it, and at that time, so this would be, I don't know, 2012, 2013. I don't know, it was sooner than that. It'd be 2015, I guess. There was a fellow down in Texas who sold small gearhead motors. He's since passed, but I got a couple of small gearhead motors from him. And they're small enough that with a bit of reworking of the frame and the weight inside the engine, you can put the gearhead motor right inside the locomotive. So the picture shows me using a Dremel to hog out some of the plastic to get the motor to sit down inside the frame. Next slide. So this picture here shows the motor mounted in place. So again, it was just a matter of making sure that the angle was correct and that the gear meshed properly, and then I epoxied it into place. The second picture is showing all the replacement parts that I made, well, not all of them, but the majority of them anyway, parts for the boiler. Because the boiler was in fact OO scale, that meant the headlight, the stack, the domes, all of that stuff was oversized for HO. So the Jones book has a drawing in it of a Central Vermont locomotive. And I basically scaled my parts off of that and created new domes, the matching bell, the stack. Back in the background there, you can see the cab. It's had the windows filed out, and sitting on the table beside the cab is the replacement windows, because the Central Vermont had kind of very specific windows in their cabs. Replaced the headlight. And let's see what else. Oh my goodness. Oh, there's the list. Tender trucks, the driver medallion, all kinds of stuff on the external of the engine. I did all that in Fusion 360. Now, as a machine shop teacher, Fusion 360 is not something that came natural to me. I'm, hands-on machining. So I had to learn all of that to teach my students. And again, I learned it basically by downloading the software and then finding tutorials on YouTube until I got competent enough with it in order to be able to make this stuff. And it's free to hobbyists. There's numerous software. It doesn't have to be Fusion. There's Onshape is also free. There's one oh my goodness. It's another AutoCAD product. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it's more aimed at kids. But I've seen some fantastic work done with it. But yeah, there's lots of online videos. So you just got to take the time to sit down with it and the videos, and you too can make this kind of stuff. Next slide. And that's the completed locomotive. So on the left there, you see the fireman's side of the engine. You can see the cab windows. Like I said, they're rather specific to Central Vermont. Um, I don't know why they had that particular style, but that was their thing. And the medallion hanging between the drivers was kind of an interesting one. It has the monogram for the railroad, so it says CV in the middle of the loop. And then around the outside of the loop, it says, I think it says Central Vermont, St. Albans, 1885, I think it said. And then it had that little American shield there, which I made by creating it on, I think it was, I'm not sure what drawing software I used for that. Printed it out on a piece of paper and glued it on there because there was no other way. And the striping work on the tender, again, I did that in, I can't remember what the drawing software was, but it was more of a graphic design software than it was a CAD type drawing. And it's printed out on a piece of paper. And this was John Ott's suggestion, was that I made a wrapper that went all the way around the tender out of paper, and it's got the striping built into it. I also designed this locomotive to be a dead rail engine. Now, the engine or the electric motor being in the boiler made for a lot of room in the tender, however, not enough. So I had to create a follower car, and what you see there in the bottom right hand corner, it was a stock car, and it's got the Stanton S cab system mounted inside of it, and I would use a magnetic reed switch to turn it on and turn it off, and it's got a Tsunami 40 Economy. I can't remember exactly which model of decoder it was, along with Stanton's RC receiver system and a battery, and connected that through the tender up to the locomotive. And yeah, I love dead rail. I mean, I had experience with dead rail previous to HO because of the F scale stuff, which was also dead rail. But putting it into this engine was really an interesting project to get HO working on dead rail. Next slide. Okay, so that finishes my HO career. I ended up selling that locomotive, well, when I moved to this house, because at that point I had decided I wasn't going to continue with HO and I was going to get deep into F scale large size, and I sold it. So I no longer own that one. But this is how far back this model goes. My dad, when he was building his two-footer stuff, subscribed to Live Steam magazine and Model Tech, and of course, every month he would get his magazines, and he'd read them, and I'd read them, and in 1985. I saw this picture here. It was in part of an article to do with building a live steam 10-wheeler, a narrow Denver and Rio Grande T12 10-wheeler. And this picture was in in the article. And I didn't know it at the time, but that picture is not actually a T12. It's a sister locomotive, shall we say, to the T12. And I just fell in love with this thing. It's got everything that I love about 1880s, early 1880s, late 1870s locomotives. It's got it all. The big headlight, the ringed domes, the peaked roof cab, the separated driver from the second and third driver. I mean, I love it. I dreamed about making it for years and years and years. And of course, my Bachmann big hauler, which is down in the picture, the bottom picture there, was my attempt initially to replicate that locomotive. Um, the problem, of course, is that it's just kind of sort of right. I mean, the wheels look right, but they're not the right diameter. The boiler, the Bachmann big hauler boiler is a funny looking thing. And it it just didn't sit right with me. And I had it for probably 10 years that I ran it, and it ran great. But as you see behind it there, it's got the F scale passenger car sitting behind it, um, it just didn't sit right with me, and I was never truly happy with it. So I needed to move on, and that would be the next slide. So ended up finding myself a fairly cheap Bachmann 440 that I used as a parts locomotive, and it supplied me with a bunch of bits and pieces. So the motor block, the axles, wheel centers, because the wheels, you can unbolt them and basically pull them off the axles. Some of the valve motion. The Bachmann and 440 and 260 are very nicely built locomotives. They've got working valve motion. They're nicely detailed. They look really good. There's a few things maybe that could use improvement, but in general, they're really nice little engines. Um, the problem for me, though, is that original locomotive, the Denver and Rio Grande engine that I wanted to build, uh, had 45-inch drivers, and they don't exist. So I would have to use 3D printing to create drivers for that locomotive. Just about everything else on the engine ended up being laser cut steel. So if we go to the next slide. Oh, and this is so before I get into the actual build of the engine, again, this is from David Fletcher. When he, after he had supplied me with the drawings for that little baggage car, I started talking to him about the Class 45.5 engine that I wanted to build, because I had some drawings from, I think it was Shortline and Narrow Gauge Gazette, and some of the things I was seeing were confusing me. And when I talked to him about it, he's like, well, I have the general arrangement drawing, which is what you see here. This is an actual reproduction of the original Baldwin general arrangement drawing. I couldn't believe it, that he had this stuff, as well as the original order sheet for the thing. So, I mean, it was just like, oh my goodness, the people you find to help you with this stuff is just amazing. But yeah, having that drawing made it possible for me to build this locomotive. Without it, I don't think I could have. And this is again David's drawing of these engines. He was doing these drawings as a series, I believe, for Narrow Gauge and Shortline Gazette. And of course, having this drawing helped a lot with the decaling and the paint scheme and how the thing was supposed to look, as well as, of course, accurate measurements and drawings. So that was two of the things that he really helped me with. Next slide. So because the drivers for this locomotive are 45-inch, and the only other commercial drivers that would have been appropriate were 40-inch drivers, you wouldn't think, a 5-inch amount of difference scaled down to, 20.3 would make that much of a difference. It is actually visually quite a difference. It's about a quarter of an inch in diameter difference, and so it does make a difference. And again, here I used Fusion 360 to create this driver, and it's designed so that the center will work with the Bachmann center piece, so that I can just exchange their 40-inch driver for my 45-inch driver, and it'll just fit right on. And because they're the driver, they needed to be made out of something pretty substantial. And at the time, a company called Shapeways, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Shapeways. Of course, I guess they're trying to get back into business now, but they went bankrupt. But I sent that file and two other files, because there's one for the center driver and one for the rear driver, to Shapeways, and had them printed in steel. I mean, I was blown away that such a thing could even be done, that you could print in steel. And for the most part, there was minimal machining that needed to be done. It was amazing how accurate those things were. However, the downside was the cost. They were outrageously expensive, but I mean, it was a once in a lifetime project that I just, had been driven to do since 1985. and I felt the need to just, do it. So there was a bit of variability. I've got two of them kind of wiggle and woggle a bit. Um, but I straightened them as best I could and went on from there. Next slide. So to design the frame, again, I followed a method that David Fletcher had made using his Mason Bogey clinics that he presented on mylargescale.com, where it was all laser cut steel done in layers, and then the layers all clicked together to create the formed shape. So using that general arrangement drawing that he gave me, plus the method that he showed in those master classes on my large scale, I managed to create a drawing of what I needed for the frame. And what you're seeing at the top here is the layers of the frame on the left, and on the right we're looking at the saddle and the slide for the front pilot truck down at the bottom. And then down on the bottom left there is having it basically all assembled on top of itself. And of course, the bottom picture is the actual frame all welded together, ready to continue to move, to put parts together. And I did all that in, an AutoCAD derivative type thing. So something called DraftSite. Unfortunately, DraftSite is not free, but I mean, I use it enough that I can justify the cost of doing it, and created those individual shapes in DraftSite, sent them to a place that does laser cutting for steel, got all the parts home, and then started assembling it. Next slide. So the top picture there is the assembled drive line and the bottom end of the locomotive. Somebody was talking about stopping to take pictures when you're in process. Yeah, well, those are the pictures that I got of the cow catcher, of the pilot. One when I was just starting, and then one when it's finished and painted. And it was like, oh, I didn't stop and start taking pictures halfway through the process, because you got into it, and it was like each little piece, because the whole thing's made out of wood, and you just get going, right? And then I forgot to take pictures. So the cab is a steel, laser cut steel. It was all part of the same kit with the bottom end, and it's laser cut steel with a plastic overlay. And the bottom picture is showing me through a magnifying glass, filing 45-degree angles on all of the corners on the plastic to create little chamfers all the way around all the openings. Next slide. And this is putting it together. So the cab here, I'm putting the decals onto it. And the decals were quite a job. First of all, again, I designed them using DraftSite, and then had them printed on water slide decal paper. But I couldn't put them on as one piece. Like, for instance, the three-sided rectangle that goes around each window, I ended up having to cut it into three pieces so that I could maneuver one piece at a time into place, and then slide the next one up to it, butt it up, line it up, and then do the next one. There was no way that I could do them all connected without the decal just twisting into a pretzel that I couldn't use. The bottom picture there is the cab roof that I eventually created using CAD, or Fusion 360. I had a laser cut one made just out of a plate steel, but when I bent it, it didn't bend nice and sharp. It was kind of rounded, so it didn't fit right, and I didn't like the look of it. So I ended up designing the roof using Fusion, and then printing it out on a home style 3D printer. Yep. Okay. Next slide. So the top end was created partially from the Bachmann locomotive. You can see on the left there is the It's about half of the boiler from the Bachmann locomotive, and on the right is 1.5 inch ABS drain pipe that I glued all together, stuck it in a lathe, turned it down, and then stuck the two pieces together to create the length of the boiler that I needed. You can also see at this point that I've added in the cylinders, which were turned steel, so they've got a fair bit of weight to them, and made the saddle. You can see the saddle up there underneath the firebox. And the bottom picture is showing that I used the domes off the American, but its diameter was different. So I ended up having to reprofile them to fit better. Next slide. Okay, so then I built an air pump for the locomotive. Um, Denver and Rio Grande Western, or Denver and Rio Grande, was one of the very first users of Westinghouse air pumps, because of course in their mountainous terrain they needed the brakes, so they were a very early adopter of that. And so I rebuilt that. I eventually found some drawings for it, because of course the very earliest ones are not easy to find drawings for. And it's made out of turned steel on the top and the bottom, joined in the middle with a little bit of welding rod, and then the rest is plastic added on to create the detail. The next applies to the dome that you see there, with applying the decals. So again, the same thing, putting that yellow decal around the edge of that ring of the dome was that was quite a challenge, because of course it would try to slide off, or it would twist on you as it went around. I eventually got it, but yeah, that was a challenge. And the boiler was painted in gunmetal metallic, and I used a polished steel paint color for the boiler bands. Next, and the back head. So the back head was created again partially from that ABS drain pipe, and a piece of polystyrene that I glued on top of it, and then just started adding detail. And you can see in the cab there, the back head actually comes up, it separates from the engine. I can just lift it basically out, and all that detail is applied directly onto the back head. So what you're seeing there is a cab light, which is turned brass. Or not a cab light, sorry, a gauge light, because way back they didn't have light. So basically, if you were running at night, you had to have some sort of a oil lamp thing that would light up the gauge so you could see how much pressure you had in the boiler, but it wouldn't create enough light to blind you to not be able to see out the front. So they just had a little bit of an opening out the front that pointed onto the gauge. There's a lubricator in there, and the injectors, and there's a brake stand there, and the Johnson bar. So fully detailed cab. I don't see. No, I took that picture. I made a crew for them as well, which I discussed in the last locomotive. Um, yeah, and so in that bottom picture, you'll see that piece of metal there attached to the back head. That's the Johnson bar, which yeah, you can see it in the upper picture as well. Okay, next slide.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
this is Tom Farrell.
Hmm.
I think we should break this up into two sections. We should
Sure.
pause here, take a moment to have our Zoom crowd ask you questions for the first half of this presentation, and then, if you don't mind, we'll continue it at your convenience, but next week would be great by us. Would that be okay?
I'm thinking next week I'm gonna be busy next week.
Or the week after?
Yeah, that's probably okay.
We allotted a good amount of time, but I hate
Yep,
to
we're
interrupt.
only halfway there.
Yeah, I hate to interrupt when you're
No,
on the
that's fine.
flow. Um, let's open this up for 5 minutes of questioning if we can. Are there any questions from our Zoom audience on his work presented to date here?
I have one question, Mike. It's Pat.
Mhm.
What did you do to attach the steel together with the other parts of the steel, like in your boiler and
The
everything?
frame,
Yeah,
basically it was TIG welded. I TIG welded it together.
I kind of wondered that's what it looked like. Yeah,
So
Yeah.
very well done.
you actually did weld then, because you had mentioned earlier in the show that you welded it, and I thought, really? That you
Yeah.
TIG
Yeah.
Yeah,
welded
no, it
it?
was TIG. It was because it was a bunch of layers underneath where the axles are. Um, I can because I can completely remove the axles just like you would on a real locomotive. I had to create solid down there so that I could thread it and then be able to get the bearings out. So yeah, it's TIG welded together. But of course, there was a lot of tabs made so that things would click together, and then just a bit of TIG over top to hold it so that it wouldn't fall apart.
Very well done, Mike. Very well done.
Thank you.
Any other questions for
Yeah,
Mike?
Mike, Greg, I have a question. You're using all the disciplines with machining and 3D printing and laser cutting, but at one point you were talking about laser cutting the metal.
Yep.
Is that using the same type of laser cutter that we're familiar with as laser cutting wood for kits,
It
or
is,
is it
but I
something
had to go to
specialized?
Well, it's specialized only in the sense that the machines are significantly larger and more powerful.
Uh-huh.
So I had to go to a commercial laser cutter. Now all I did was, pull up the Google and say, laser cutters in my area,
Aha.
and there they were. And I contacted them and I said, I got a really small job. Can you do it for me? Sure, bring it over.
Ah,
Okay.
that sounds good. Do you do any type of laser cutting at home, wood or anything like that?
No, no, I don't have my own laser. I
I
have
see one
another
in your
coach.
future.
Yeah, I have another coach, laser cut coach, waiting to go. I got all the drawings done. It's all ready to roll, but yeah, I don't have a laser cutter.
Beautiful work.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mike?
This is Bill. With all that metal you've got in this thing, this engine's got to be pretty hefty, don't you think?
Oh, it's a bit of a beast. Yeah. Of course, the F scale in general is kind of hefty, but yeah, this one's and I even cast my own lead weight, which I forgot to add to this. I cast my own lead weight for it so that it's got some good heft to it.
Yeah, he could have made it in live steam and probably got away with it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other questions for Mike? I've got one. You said when you did the wheels with Shapeway, you had them shot in metal. I assume that's a powdered metal technology, and then they had to sinter those wheels. Is that correct?
Probably.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how
Probably.
they did it.
Yeah.
I was curious. I mean, I know that's how they do it. They lay down powdered metallurgy and then they throw it in a furnace and sinter it.
Mm.
Um, and you said there was some wiggle and wog. I mean, if they're 3D printed, what was it them or you? Why wouldn't they be dead on? Just curious.
Um, well, I think, any it's 3D printed, you throw it in an oven, it's gonna warp and twist a little bit. So
Did you have to
they're,
chew it up with a lathe or
yep,
anything?
yeah, a couple of them I had to true the tread up a little bit. And then some of them also the center hub needed a bit of filing to straighten them out so that they didn't wobble so much. But in general, yeah, they were pretty good.
And what was the time frame on from beginning to end on this project? Just curious how long something of this is very like
I want to
Greg.
say it was 2 years,
Okay.
2 year project. Yeah.
I mean, like Greg Cassidy pointed out, you're hitting all the disciplines here that we can think of for scratch building, 3D printing, something new to people, which is sintering, the 3D powdered metal.
I don't know where I would get that done if I needed to do it again now that, Shapeways went bankrupt and I
Oh,
have
you
no
could
idea where you go.
you'd probably go on an adventure, but you could find it. It's not cheap though. There's so many
No, it is definitely not. The set of six, I think, was darn near $1,000.
I was going to say, you're talking, I know that industry, so
Yeah.
that's interesting. Well, like I say, that's a fascinating project you've got there, and we look forward to the second half. Sorry to cut you off, but
That's no problem.
I know I'm going to get.
Oh, just a real quick one. I have noticed Shapeways, whatever. They seem to be back in business in some kind of new format. So look at.
Mhm. I don't know if they offer the same services they did
I don't-
before.
But
Yeah.
they've done something to kind of get
Mhm.
the back.
One curiosity question, what kind of radius is this thing gonna run on?
I try to go no less than 5.5 feet.
Okay, that's okay.
Prefer bigger, but
Yeah.
5.5 feet is about minimum.
Right. Okay. Some good size
Well,
usability.
Mayor McDonald here, is that a T12 now that you've got?
No, it's a class 45.5. They're almost identical, but and it's in my if you want to know, it's in my blog what the differences are. They're very close, but the class 45.5 was the predecessor to the T12. And basically what it amounted to, I think anyway, was that this locomotive didn't have enough steaming power. And so they changed the design just slightly in order to get 2 extra square feet of grate surface into the newer engines. And they were successful. And of course, 2 of them survive and one of them's been restored. But none of the class 45.5 survive.
Thank you. I didn't catch your blog. Do you mind repeating it, or
It was in the slides, but yeah, it's big stacks, little locomotives, all one word. .wordpress.com.
When we repost the show, we break for your information, Mike, we take your segment and we'll break it out into YouTube. It'll be a standalone segment.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have the entire show reposted on YouTube at the end of this show. And then after 2 or 3 days, we break out each segment individually. And I'm going to with your permission, take your presentation, turn into a feature article in our New Tracks Modeler digital magazine, which has a circulation of about 10,000.
Sure.
Well, okay, you can see the interest.
Yeah, there it is. Somebody posted it. Yep, that's it.
Okay. Well, you can see the interest is high. You did a great job, first time presenter. That only means we get to have you come back in a couple of weeks and then maybe in a future.
So whoever was controlling this presentation remembers where you cut me off so that we can start over in the same place.
We
Because
will.
I don't remember.
Again, it's posted. So but we'll have part 1, part 2.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening. And